I wish I had learned this truth many years ago. Be thankful for the days, good and bad.
All right, welcome to another episode of Warrior versus Zombie, and I'm excited to introduce another warrior guest to you. And as always, I'm excited to share her. But let's Rhonda Farrell, and I'm going to work with her name here because Farrell is like a feral cat. And but anyway, so I'm working on that. So we were chatting about that and having some fun. So success is a journey. It's not a destination. As warriors, we all have a history of ups and downs, wins and losses that are all part of making us who we are up to this point. And they provide a foundation for our path forward. We all battle our inner zombie as well as those zombies in our world. And each episode, I interview warriors who are aspiring leaders from all walks of life. Entrepreneurs, artists, health practitioners, business owners, literally any inspired leader that has a story to tell. These warriors have a cause, they have unique value, and a vision that goes generations into the future, and today's warrior is no exception. Rhonda Farrell is an awesome warrior. Her 30-plus year warrior journey includes serving in the United States Marine Corp, serving Fortune 500 companies, state, civil, and federal government agencies in the areas of transformational change management. I know a little bit about that from my own past. Rhonda ignites, engages, and encourages and empowers warriors and organizations to even higher levels of performance and excellence. Rhonda Farrell, welcome to Warrior versus Zombie. Where are you? I know you're kind of mobile. Where are you at today?
Thank you so much. Today I'm in the DC metro area. It is a phenomenal place to serve organizations, leaders, and executives across many different industry segments and really bring together the populations that I love to serve. Thank you for having me today, and hoorah to all of our veterans listening today.
Yeah, and we have a few of those. In fact, I'm expecting to see my son-in-law here this weekend. He's just finished his deployment in Qatar, and he was leading the C-17 squadron there. He was the commander of the C-17 squadron, the 816th Air Expeditionary that got all the folks and everybody out of Afghanistan. So he's been doing that for the last year. So we're excited to have that. So yes, I do have a lot of military warriors as well as just warriors in the entrepreneur space. We're all warriors. So yeah, so hoorah. So the in the Washington area, have you been there all your life? I mean, do you like? It sounds like you love that area. So
it is an easy transformation and transition from the West Coast. I am born and bred in Mountain View, California, worked in private industry and supported state government and academia in Silicon Valley for many, many years across engineering, operations, cybersecurity, and what was then called quality management.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So easy transition to the East Coast, Washington, D.C. metro area, very, very, very similar to our Silicon Valley. You all have BART, we have Metro, right? They have the San Francisco Bay, we have the Chesapeake Bay. They have San Francisco, we have parts of Washington, D.C. You will swear that you're in San Francisco. And of course, they have the whole East Bay, and we have Baltimore. So I couldn't ask for a greater place to land within the country.
Well, it's the fact that you're happy in the belly of the beast is a fun thought process for me anyway. But anyway, so let's do this. Let's take a quick break. I really want to get into, I know we want to keep this to about 30 minutes. So let's try and get into your story. What I want to hear when we come back from the break, for the audio audience, they'll hear a little bit of Ricky Jean Wright, is how you got to from where you started. Sounds like you started on the left coast and now you're in Washington, and how that all came about, and then how you got to where you are today. And then we'll take another break after that. So let's hear a little bit of our theme song, It's Not the Getting There, from Ricky Jean Wright, and we'll be right back with Rhonda Farrell and Warrior versus Zombie.
But the miles become the teacher while the student learns real slow, traveling blind most of the time. wherever you go. It's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not
All right,
a race.
Rhonda, we're
to
back,
see
and nice check-in. Know where you're at, know what you're doing. You're on the move. So tell us, how did you get from where you started, wherever you want to pick, whatever point you want to pick, how you got from where you started to where you are today?
And that is a phenomenal question. So I guess I should take my ooh-rah and then broaden that to a hooah for all of our Army personnel out there listening. But truly, I started in the Marine Corps, right? So fresh out of high school, into the Marine Corps, stationed at Quantico, look forward 30 years later and really completing that circle by providing consulting and management and technical services into federal government agencies, services, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
In what happened in between is everything, right? I think to your point about how do you grow yourself as well as your teams and your organizations, and that's through a method I think both you and I are familiar with, David, and that's just through service, value, and impact.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised, right, as part of the Marine Corps family, and then really went into a commercial entity with strong ties into the military organizations, the government entities that they served into, and academia. So I was able to really harness and utilize all the experiences from my military service, transfer that to commercial, and really build upon that family connection over multiple decades of service into commercial firms within Silicon Valley. The majority of us either graduated straight from college and were recruited out of a specific computer science related degree program, or like me, served into a computer science related portion of the Marine Corps or other service. Then we worked as we broadened our product lines, we integrated with our partners, we built out our teams and made impactful service to our organizations and its partners. We all graduated eventually to our next step. So I think you stated that you were basically a senior executive within a consulting firm, right? And right, we really look at 3 to 4 different trajectories over time. The trajectory of the organization and the rate at which it's maturing, the partners that it's in, say, cooperation with over time, the team maturity and maturation rate, right? And then the individual. And so we really look at this systems of a systems approach to helping people reach their next level of opportunity and service value and impact through a very concerted, planned method of advancement. And sometimes that's internally and sometimes that's externally.
So let me back you up a little bit. So we kind of got into some of your value approach and some of the how you do things, and that's brilliant. I love hearing that. What I really want to hear is a little bit of, and this is always fascinating to me. It's number one, the most important thing warriors want to hear. Oftentimes in the corporate world and in military and government and other places, we're not encouraged to really project who we are. We're part of an organization, part of a team, part of a company, part of this. That's often the case, is to kind of put that, in front. And what's going on with the warrior behind the scenes is not necessarily brought forward. You have some good leaders, you have some people that actually care. But my question to you is, over that journey from starting in the military, you mentioned a military family. You're obviously a woman. What kind of challenges, as we call them, zombies, did you encounter along that path? I know you didn't just wake up where you're at. I'm sure there was some journey there, and so we'd really be interested to hear a little bit of that.
Thank you. I think to your point, I think you're asking. So I want to take us back in time to late 70s, early 80s, going into the 90s, when from the West Coast point of view and from our partner views, we really had a employment for life type model, right?
Mhm.
So a person would graduate from college, enter the workforce, enter that organization, and if everything worked correctly, that person and their spawn, right, would really stay there and be part of that organizational family for decades, right? And
Right.
I personally experienced that. What happened is the model changed, right? So we had to then change with that, right? So if you look at I want to say around 1997, 98 to 99, you saw IBM and many like organizations, which I was a part of, Omdal Corporation, really having to change the employment model to really meet economic needs, right? And that has a dependency on where the partners are located at. And then also, if you were looking at that same point in time, the internet was starting up. We were spawning innovation at 100x scale, going from mainframes to midis to minis, and then the personal computer, all in a span, not a development cycle, but being able to reach the user base and communities, right, in a span of just a couple short years. So the rate of change got exponentially faster. The technological build out of organizations within Silicon Valley exploded. And so there became more opportunity. And basically, we saw our organizational family and infrastructure really, I'll say, blossom and bloom and sometimes rocket out from our original organizations to maybe 10 to 20 technology firms across Silicon Valley. And so our growth ultimately was one of necessity, right? So we had individual leaders that we may have been serving into for in some cases decades, right? They then we call it getting your wings, right? They got their wings, got anointed to be leaders of like programs and projects in these other organizations, because that's how you mature and that's how you scale and that's how you advance, right? And so us, as we were coming up through that pipeline, that then got deployed out across Silicon Valley with that. You mentioned the point of what does that feel like to be a woman in what was then a traditionally male dominated field. And I would say there was no difference. For me, I was raised with many female friends, male friends, obviously going into the Marine Corps. I think we had a 1 to 100 plus ratio of females to male. And at some point in time, it's more about what can you do together versus what are the differences that keep you apart or stop you from being able to take on that mission. And so when I really mentioned the culture of those early years, it's because they could look past what somebody would consider a difference and turn that into a opportunity for innovation success by bringing in these disparate perspectives, disparate populations, etc. Right? We're lucky in Silicon Valley to have, I'd say, 25 different ethnic groups, right, across just as many age ranges, making up our workforces and that spectrum of delivery. And so it's like I said, it's really about bringing together the common factors versus focusing on the differences that helped us be successful. I'm not saying that was not without challenges, right? Each of those changes is significant because that, especially when that organization may have been the only place and the only culture that leader or that practitioner ever knew in their life. So talk about a seismic shift that you need to make to be able to go on to your next level of potential. I think that's one of those zombie moments.
Yeah. And actually you're so typical of and I don't mean that in a negative way at all. The warriors that I always interview that are on the path and still on the path moving forward. The obstacles, the challenges, the differences, the things that might be something that somebody sees as in the way of their progress or moving forward, the warriors that every time that I interview, it's like, yeah, I had that happen, or that was the case, but I did this. And it's kind of like, oh, it's not an event. It's not something that is in the way, but really it's just something on the way. And so when those changes occur, when you're working with Amdahl or whatever, you were working, in the tech world, I understand that very well, being with Accenture and EDS prior to that. And, I have partners at Microsoft, just other things that that whole world, it is that corporate mentality requires you to adopt. And then it's always the people that really look for the opportunity in the change and not the fact that the change happened, that always move forward in a productive and successful way. I used to do large multi-billion-dollar outsourcing transactions. And so I could tell you over and over and over again. So, that's where our change alignment kind of in our stories come to pass, is that always the success occurred with the people that said, okay, I'm working for a new company, processes, everything's changed. Now what? What do how do I take advantage of that? Because with great change comes great opportunity. It also challenge, but life is always about challenge and support. Warriors that we talk to know that. So, well, let's do this. I want to get into where you are today, and we'll talk about why you're doing what you're doing and so on. We come back, we'll hear another little snippet for the audio audience of Ricky Jean Wright and our theme song, It's Not the Getting There, and we'll be right back with Rhonda Farrell and Warrior versus Zombie.
It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. Funny how wisdom and youth.
All right, we are back. And Rhonda, a lot of stuff there. We'll have to listen to it a couple of times. You covered a lot of ground. I think some of us who have a little more story than others and some diversity in there, we have to kind of shorten it and kind of compress it and kind of put it into principles, because to talk about the details and so on it would take us way too long. So, but with that, I said, now we're to what you're doing today. What's got you on the road today, the deliverable that I think you have after we do this podcast, other types of things, and help the audience understand, why are you doing that today? You've done a lot of things over the years. And then what do you see your unique value? And if anything were possible, what kind of impact would you like?
Thank you so much. So, right, if we look at, to your point, right, it's a journey, and I am on my path and really able to harness and utilize everything that I have learned from every organization and every leader and peer within those organizations, right? So I'm an executive consultant and coach, really helping leaders and organizations drive to higher levels of clarity, alignment, and performance. Talk about transformation, we talk about change management, but really when we look at the root of that, it's about continuous innovation. And you nailed it earlier. You said, learn how to love the challenge, because it's when we can stop looking at them as problems and embracing them as an opportunity is when everybody can get a win. I think there's multiple points that I try to live throughout that thought process. And that's really about, it's about culture. It's about shared mindset. It's about creating a win for everybody. As we're going through some changes that can be very complex and can really throw curveballs at many people, either on their career paths or to questioned assumptions that they may hold, to the point where they need to reevaluate, right? So when I think of your podcast name, I think of really the things that are going on in the world where we're attempting to insert a higher level of consciousness, right? And consciousness may look and sound like transparency. It may look and sound like communication. It may look and sound like collaboration and engagement. But ultimately, what we're trying to do, looking back at the environments that worked from a cultural standpoint, is make a common fabric, peer to peer, leader to leader, organization to organization, so that we can move from a zero-sum game to where everybody gets a win from that. And that's when we talked about service and value and impact, it's really about living that. It's about finding situations where that may not be completely into play, and then looking to re-clarify, looking to realign, looking for opportunities to get a quick win for a leader, for a team, for an organization, so that they can understand the merits and then that they can really get behind that. So you're building buy-in every step of the way through this continuous innovation model.
No, I think that's brilliant. So your continuous innovation model, focus forward, those kinds of things. There's people that I know you align with, have similar targets. I know you can't serve everybody. Where do you focus right now in terms of organization size? Do you work with large organizations still, entrepreneurs? What's that look like?
Thank you. I'll call it 3 different personas. First, okay. I serve very large commercial, I'll say federal government agencies and services, and then through government contracting firms that serve into them internationally. So that would be my number 1 priority. Number 2 is I serve into nonprofits, community group, and economic development teams. And what are they trying to do is really drive the opportunity. They might be focused on policy. They might be focused on process. They may be focused on building out communities that other populations can leverage to better enable and amplify their success. And then lastly, I'm serving directly into those populations. So women, minority, veteran entrepreneurs, startups, leaders whom are building products and or services to either be integrated with a larger solution or to be eventually acquired by one of those larger entities, right? But I think at its core, no matter if it's very large agencies or the commercial firms that serve into them, or if we're talking about that middleware, right? Our community groups, our nonprofits, our economic development teams, where it's really our acceleration points, right? Or the individuals themselves. We look at that 3-pronged approach to continuous innovation. It still goes back to mindset and culture, right? It still goes back to clarity, alignment, and performance, because what we have to do is we have to understand the person, the individual. No matter what other personas they wear, they're going to carry that whatever is in their unconscious and conscious into all of those other realms of their life. And what we want to do is we want to make sure they're strong. We want to make sure they are aligned. And we want to make sure they're clear and that they're focused on ultimately what they want to craft. We call that creating a life by design. And when you create a life by design that's in alignment with all of the other things you're doing, it is with ease and flow instead of bumps and challenges and constraints, because you're constantly feeding and nurturing the energy and you're amplifying your capabilities so that you can better serve into your communities, your families, and your organizations.
Wow. So yeah, a lot of words there, and but I've been listening, and again, we're so aligned on so many levels. For one thing, I ran around for a long time, and I still one of the things that I'm accused of saying similar things over and over and over again because they're truth, right? But I mean, I say life by design, not by default. one of the things
Yes.
that I love to say. The other
Yes.
thing is, no, doesn't matter whether you work in a corporation or you're an entrepreneur or whatever, or anything in between, or you're a leader, you always bring yourself to work.
Yes.
You can't disconnect your work life from the family. So all of that, those are all, all those dimensions of your life. I know you, when we were doing the mastermind, by the way, anybody listening to this, if you want to get a little more insight into the methodology and some of this stuff, you can watch last week's Connect Mastermind show on the Be Connected platform or on our YouTube channel. So look for that. But anyway, you can find that, and the brilliance of this is that it is a journey, and life is a team sport. You
Yes.
need to know where you're going, and so that other people, and you use another term that I love, is alignment. Other people can align with you, and whatever. They're not on your path. They're not doing what you're doing. They're aligned with you, and if they're supporting you or maybe challenging you to keep you within the rails, whatever it happens to be, it's all for your good if you have that clarity that you're talking about what is going to be the ultimate thing. So let me ask you one question, then we'll take another break, is if anything were possible, and I always say, and I believe everything is possible, what kind of impact are you hoping to have with what you're doing today?
Thank you. I would say it's probably very similar to what you're doing and your path, right? To me, there is nothing better than the intentional dissemination of these principles, right? Consciousness about life by design, about, to me, helping people realize at least their next level of potential and optimizing their core competency so that they can deliver at a higher level. I think from a service value and impact perspective, the monetary gains from that, the professional gains from that, the family gains from that, the community gains from that is something that is just phenomenally so satisfying when you can help set that into motion and support them as they go along their journey. So that would be number one. Mm-hmm. Number two, I think, is we never stop growing as practitioners, as mentors, or as champions, as consultants. And so really honing in on what are the secrets to success and being able to harden them and live them at a deeper level as I go along my path in service to others, I think is key as well.
Well, that's brilliant. And I love it because, again, we are very aligned. And so my unique reason for being on the planet, and that aligns with some of my methodology, is to change the world one dream at a time. And you say, how can you change the world when you're just focused on one dream at a time? What you're saying is you're encountering those people, they're understanding where they want to go, and then you create that ripple effect, if you will,
exactly.
That then they are moving the people that their communities, their companies, the world that they're brought into contact, because we're all connected, right? We're energetically and spiritually all connected in some form. We just don't always behave that way, but we still have to do our part. And so it's just a brilliant thing to say, that's the kind of impact. I want to impact that. I'm going to focus. And you seem to be very focused. So that's a beautiful thing. Well, let's do this. We're going to take one more quick break for the audio audience. And we'll be right back with what I call the Land the Plane segment. At that point, I want to hear, if we take away anything from the podcast, what would you want us to take away? And then we'll hear how we stay in touch. So we'll be right back with Rhonda Farrell and Warrior versus Zombie.
Funny how wisdom and youth are always two different games. The years flew by so fast, is the common human complaint. The memories in our minds turn to diamonds in our soul, and by the grace of God, on down the road.
All right, we are back, and Rhonda, it's been fun, energetic, and I know we got to land the plane here, so let's do this. So tell me, if we take away any one or two things from this whole discussion, your story, what you're doing. What would you want us to take away?
I think there's two areas that have been most instrumental in enabling me to really focus on that service value and impact. And that's something called the 4 agreements and a deep level of question. So oftentimes you stated very early, right, that people wear these different personas and they cannot feel like they can bring their whole selves to the table no matter where they're at and have that be valued. And I would like to argue that point, that the more we disassociate and distance ourselves from who truly we are as people and leaders, and where our passion and purpose collide and how we can serve to the greatest leaders, is where we heighten the opportunity for conflict, for resistance. And 4 agreements is really about telling all your truth, feeling all your feelings, being impeccable with your word, and really instantiating that in all that you do every day. The other core statement and the core question is, so oftentimes, based on our background and based on our level of maturity and based on our growth trajectory, we can tend to be inside our own box, even as consultants, as executives and leaders, right? Instead of stepping back, looking at the playing field from, right, we'll just say from 20,000 foot view on that event unfolding, or where the chessboard is, right? We tend to be down in the weeds reacting. And so I think one of the greatest lessons that I've learned is to, as soon as I feel like I am reacting versus following a strategy and being proactive and being authentic in that service and in that engagement, I try to step myself back and move up to be able to relook at that, the chess game, right? And really, I ask myself one question. It's a very simple question, and it oftentimes removes any obstacles I may have built in my own mind to looking at a situation. And that is, what would love do here? Right? So if we think it's okay for us to be able to care about our peers, to care about our workforce, to care about our communities, to care about our family, to care about the customers that they serve, we can come at that place from a place of love and just ask ourselves, what would love do? Oftentimes that allows us to go to really calm down all of our immediate reactions, go to a place of really, how can I be of service, value, and impact in this? How can I look at this differently so that we can assuage whatever misassumptions are made? We can work through those and we can come out to a constructive, successful outcomes that really, through that growth opportunity, allow people to 10x or 100x their impact.
Wow. So I love that. I've said often in this podcast that I'm a Christian and I only have 2 jobs. One is to love God and the other is to love you. And if you add that frame, if you will, to every thought, as you've so eloquently stated, what would that look like? It sorts through a lot of stuff you could do and kind of gives you some clarity. The other one you said is knowing, why you're doing what you're doing and how you show up, and the agreements that are your
Yes.
authentic warrior. You're not somebody else. We're all unique. We all have unique reason for being on the planet, I believe. We all have unique value to bring to the party. And we all have a journey that we're on that is ours. And, if you know what it is, you know why you're here, and people can then align with you. And if you realize that even if they're not doing it your way, love them, figure out how to make it better, figure out what are those agreements. That's brilliant. So I love that summary. I love those takeaways. So tell me, I know we're doing this live on the Be Connected platform. I actually noticed that our CEO was in the audience for a bit of Be Connected. So It was nice seeing Tanya on here. And but beyond the Be Connected platform, and we'll get you really ramped up there, Rhonda. But how do we stay in touch with you? How should we follow up with you?
Thank you. You can reach to me at Global Innovation Strategies, CEO at GBLINNOV stratllc.com. I would love to share with you tips, tricks, techniques to help you more strongly gain clarity, alignment, and performance in your life, your families, and your organizations. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today, David Roberts, and the Be Connected community. And here's to the power of love spread across the globe.
All right. Well, thank you, Rhonda. I'm so grateful and appreciate you taking and investing again in my network and my community, your most valuable asset, which is your time, but there's also a lot of brilliance there and a lot of your warrior journey that we got to hear about today. So again, I will be reaching out to Rhonda. By the way, for those that are watching this replay on the YouTube channel or whatever, I'll be putting some links in there that you can follow up to make it easier. And if you're hearing this on the audio platform, just pop over to the app and you should be able to find those links as well. So, well, that's been awesome. Well, we're going to land the plane for another episode of Warrior versus Zombie. And we'll be back next Thursday, same time. And you can find us on all of the podcasting platforms. So Rhonda, again, thank you. And let's hear the final outro of It's Not the Getting There with Ricky Jean Wright. And we'll be back next week with Warrior versus Zombie.
It's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there, when you get there you'll know. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there, when you get there you'll know.